Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Plan for Success 2020 workshop. My name is Lynn Gardner. It's my pleasure to be with you as a facilitator for this important message for your business. You know, it's pretty overwhelmed. We sent out the announcement for this call, and I think it was like 350 people actually clicked on the link to hear a little bit more, and maybe 110, 112 people actually registered for the call. I think that's a pretty big indicator that people want to understand how to plan their business. You know, you wouldn't plan, we don't live our lives this way. You know, people, if I said to you, come to my house in Virginia, but I didn't give you my address, you didn't have a GPS or a map or anything else, you know, how would you ever find me? You wouldn't. You don't live your life that way. So how in the world could you expect to build a business if that's the way you build your business? If you really don't know where you're going or how you're going to get there, or what you need to do to get there, you have no GPS, right? You're never going to find success that way. So I think it's an indicator of how interested people are in learning the steps that you need to take to succeed. And that's why we had so much interest in this call. But a lot of you might be asking, you know, maybe you got sent a link and you're on the call and you think, well, you know, listen, it's just like too complicated. Why do I want to bother having a business plan for my business? Well, because every successful business has a yearly plan. In fact, very successful businesses have a 5-year plan. If you work for somebody else, you know, you get a paycheck from a company, you better believe they have a plan. Even though you've not been privy to it, it still exists. If you work for yourself, you need one too. Listen, being an entrepreneur means that you are a business. You're your own business, and you need a plan, an action plan if you want to succeed. It's a whole lot more than just hoping you'll achieve what you say you want to achieve. It's a roadmap for how to get there. So it's my pleasure to break down conceptually how we're going to get there so that I can get you from point A to point B and you can hit the ground running in 2020. You know, most people can't answer these simple questions. These are real questions that I ask routinely and real answers that I got when I say, hey, what kind of year are you going to have? Well, I'm going to make lots of money. Well, what's lots of money? You know, people can't even put a dollar figure to that. They just want to make lots of it, right? When I say, well, what are your plans to make lots of money? They say, well, I'm just going to work really super hard. Well, that's great. What are you going to work hard doing? You know, what action are you going to take to be able to get from point A to point B? Do you have an action plan, a business plan for your business? Unless you do, you're not going to get where you think you're going to go. A lot of people like the idea of being their own boss, and boy, I sure do. I became my own boss like 3 decades ago. You know, I wanted to be the one to raise my own children. I wanted flexibility in my schedule. I want to make a lot of money. But you know, if you're your own boss, then it's you who needs to keep you on track. So let's face it, you know, a boss wouldn't put up with you slacking the way you slack. A boss wouldn't put up with you sleeping on the job. A boss wouldn't tolerate excuses for why you haven't done your job. A boss wouldn't tolerate you refusing to attend meetings, and they wouldn't accept the fact that you refused to go to training. A boss wouldn't listen to you whining about how hard it is to do your job. So if you don't have a boss, you are your own boss, then be a boss and treat your business like a business. Listen, guys, a boss would fire most of you people if you behaved in your job the way you behave it in your business. And I think that's because you haven't embraced it as a business. You don't know how to look at it as a business, and you don't know how to plan your business as a business. And so it's going to be exciting to see what you do with what I'm going to share with you tonight. But you know what? A good plan begins at the end. You know, I am making a birthday cake for my daughter. She likes red velvet birthday cake. So I'm making the birthday cake. So I had to come up with, you know, of course, the end result is going to be that birthday cake. But then I had to reverse engineer all the steps it's going to take to ultimately lead to that, you know, red velvet cake. And that's the way we do in business. We reverse engineer our goals. And a good plan always begins at the end. What is the end? Well, first and always first is defining a dollar amount that you want to achieve in the coming year. What's your paycheck going to look like? What's your income going to look like? How can you chase your success if you don't even know what it looks like? How can you, you know, find your success if all you say is, well, I want to make lots of money? Well, you don't have a dollar figure there. You have no idea what you're going to earn. So you put a number to your plan, and everything else is built around that goal. So I want to warn you though, you know, your number needs to be achievable. High enough to make you stretch. Listen, if you want to accomplish things you've never accomplished before, you got to be willing to do things you've never done before. Anything is possible. There's no doubt about that. But when you design your plan, it needs to be a number that you can likely achieve if and only if you put the right action behind it. Everybody wants to make millions of dollars. I'm going to take a number, right? We all want to make millions of dollars a year. But if your number isn't realistic, your results won't be either. You'll get discouraged. You'll give up. You'll throw in the towel and say you can't do it. And that's all because you put a number that's just, almost impossible to achieve, at least from where you are right now. So don't discourage yourself by doing that. I do want to say that we have people on this call from various industries. We have some people in real estate, insurance agents, some people have brick and mortar. We have a lot of people in the network marketing industry. So, we've got them all over the place. The numbers are all relative, and I'm going to be using hypotheticals to get you there. But you've got to digest, the numbers based on your world and your goals as we go through. And you know what? There's no better time than now. We're approaching a new year. How wonderful it is to be able to plan that new year, to have a fresh start, a new beginning, to hit the ground running in January of 2020. So now's the time to plan that next year. You don't wait until you get into the year. You don't yawn and stretch, all the way through January and start waking up in February and start taking action in March. Come on, guys, your boss would fire you. You need to plan. The time to plan next year is right now. It's time to write your job description, if you will. What will you have to do to accomplish your goals? Define those goals, set your schedule, make a budget, and it's time to make commitments that will lead you to success. And one more thing before we get going, you need to work on your mindset. It's never ending, right? We always have to purge negative thoughts and override them with the good thoughts. That's an essential part of our growth and development. Speaking affirmations that prepare the heart for harvest, right? Having a vision board. It helps you not lose sight of your dreams. The Bible says without a vision, a people perish, and that's absolutely true. But it also says, for which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost and whether he has enough to complete it? Guys, that's about planning, right? You don't just go haphazardly through business. If you sincerely want success, then you have to put action behind all those positive thoughts, all the affirmations, and the vision board. Success will not just happen without you taking actions. It's not just going to fall out of the sky. So how much is how much? Well, again, we have, various industries represented here tonight. We have people from real estate. Their numbers are going to look a lot different than somebody else's numbers. It's going to be all over the place. So I'm going to deal with some hypotheticals, and for the sake of this explanation, to conceptually get you through the whole process of business planning, I'm going to work with 100,000. Now, I got to tell you, I know how people roll, okay? And I know people just ruffled up. Fear just went all over. Oh, holy moly, I've never made $100,000. And they started getting afraid of that $100,000. Well, anything's possible if you put in the action, if you put in the effort, you do what you got to do. 100,000 is possible for you too. But you know what? There are also people out there that looked at the $100,000 and they said, basically, I wish I could live on that. They're used to making a lot more than $100,000. So it's all relative. Don't get caught up in the number. For the sake of this presentation, just to conceptually get you there, I'm going to use $100,000 as a financial goal for 2020. And then the next step is you need to break it down. If in this case, $100,000, you divide it by 12, you come down to what does that look like every month? Well, that's $8,300 per month. And you take it a step further. You need to figure out what does it look like per week? So if you break that down 52, weeks of the year, it comes down to $1,923 per week. You need to know what it looks like. Just saying, well, I want to make lots of money next year. Again, that does nothing. Even if you said, well, I want to make $100,000, unless you understand what it looks like on a weekly basis, those weeks that you go laboriously working your job, with commitment and purpose, then you can't get there. So you do need to break whatever your number is, whatever that financial goal is for you, come up with the number and then divide it by 12 and also divide it by 52 so you can see what it looks like, each week. And don't take another step, until you do. So you might be listening to this and get all excited and start trying to go to the end of the road and not reverse engineer it. Don't go anywhere until you've identified your financial goal and you've broken it down into months and weeks so you can get a realistic look at that number. So how much do you earn? Well, you calculate your average commission. Everybody gets paid, no matter what industry you're in, you get paid to provide a product or service. So you got to come up with what that average looks like. We need a foundation to work toward that weekly of 1923, right? We're going to have a foundation. If the number fluctuates based on a certain conditions, a certain service or pricing of products or whatever, average it out. You need to start with a number for planning purposes. Don't get so caught up and trying to figure out, well, I sold 3 of these and 4 of those. Don't do that. Just try to average out what your commission is, your pay is, your payout is, each time you close on a transaction of a product or a service. How much do you earn based on transaction? So let's keep it simple. For example, let's say that you're in sales and you earn $2,000 each time you sell a product or service. This is a flat rate. I'm just coming up with a hypothetical, right? So let's say you earn $2,000. In that case, it's pretty simple. So you understand that based on the presentation example of $100,000, it breaks down into $19.23 a week. You understand that you'll need to sell 1 product or service every single week to reach your goal. And that's where most people shut down. They look at that and say, well, if I could do that, I'd already be doing that. Well, you're not doing that because you don't have a plan to do that, right? It takes a lot of action behind it. So they look at that number and they throw in the towel instead of breaking it down. So it's very important. Stay with me, guys, because we're going to break it down and you're going to see the steps that you need to take realistically to be able to accomplish that kind of goal. And it's about production, really. It's production time. So you may never thought about production this way. Your boss has an expectation of productivity, and believe me, it equates to profit or loss. Your boss knows that each step you take as an individual employee will bring them closer to their financial goal or not. They assign tasks and responsibilities and projects and all kinds of things. Each one has a value in the corporate picture. And when you don't cut it, they replace you. You got to go because they know what progress must take place to reach their goal. They don't let you go because they don't like you or all kinds of weird reasons people get. They let you go for the most part. If you can't cut it, they got to get you out of there because they have very serious goals. Well, you know what? When you work for yourself, same kind of thing. Each task, each meeting, each presentation, everything you do, all the different steps that you take has a value that can bring you closer to that annual goal. But then I want you to stop again, right? You need to determine your stats, your success rate, if you will. And a lot of people don't have a clue about that. Well, how many people on the average do you think you need to talk to before you set an appointment, for example? Do you even know what the answer is? I need to talk to 10 people to get 1 or 100 people to get 3. Do you even know what it is? How many times on the average do you meet with a potential client before you close, before it leads to a successful transaction of your product or service? How many times do you have to meet with them? You need to know how you're doing in order to detail a plan that works for you. And you also need to know how you're doing to know whether you need to get better doing what you're doing. The more you do it, no doubt you'll get better, right? But you need to know on the average, so far, what your annual income is. You understand what the breakdown is per week. You understand how many transactions it's going to take to make that. But you need to understand how often does it even happen for you. So let's assume you've been selling a product or service for a while, about $2,000 per transaction kind of thing, right? And you already have an idea of what your close rate is. If you don't already know, you need to find out. Never stop evaluating yourself, and that's what it takes to be your own boss. A boss evaluates results. I can tell you something, if you're out there meeting with potential clients and coming home empty-handed 99.9% of the time, you're not doing it right. Something's got to change. Your corporate boss would fire you if you went out on 100 appointments, came home empty-handed. Something's not working for you. So when you work for yourself, you have to hold yourself accountable. You have to understand, evaluate, take a close look in the mirror. What is it? What's happening that I'm out there meeting and I'm coming home empty-handed? So it's vitally important to have a good idea of what it takes for you to close and how many people or how many contacts it takes with each one. How many times do I need to meet with them before we close? And remember, everything you do must be thought of as having a value attached to it. Nothing will help you focus on your business. If I shut up right now, nothing will help you focus as much as, taking a look at what your stats are, if you will, what it takes for you to sign or come to a closure or make a sale. You've got to understand that nothing's going to help you focus more on your efforts than that one single step. So if you don't do anything else, you need to understand how often are you successful. And then break it down one more time. Let's say that you know that you're able to close 1 in 10 people. You know, you meet with them, you meet with 10 people. On the average, you're going to be able to sell your service, your product to one. Well, let me tell you, first of all, let's define meeting. Meeting is defined as uninterrupted time to do a professional presentation about your products or service. It's not to be confused with small talk about business. It's not to be confused with a 10-minute conversation at a chamber of commerce, or, you know, a group meeting where there's a presentation done and you have 5 minutes afterwards. You know, 1 in 10 is a low number, by the way. If you're doing professional presentations about your product or service, and if you aren't at least hitting that target, you need to go back into square one and add training into your annual plan. You need to get that number up if you're not there. But for the sake of this presentation, let's just stay with you close 1 in 10 people. So let's recap. I don't want you to get your head all cluttered up, right? I want to be sure you're following me. So our annual goal, the financial goal is $100,000. That breaks down to be $1,923 per week. Your average commission, based on what you sell, your service or product, the average commission for you is $2,000 per transaction. You need to sell 1 per week to reach that goal, right? So based on this hypothetical formula, for presentation purposes only, you'll need to meet with have professional presentations with 10 clients each week. So that's what you need to accomplish this goal. So think about that. You know, you only need to meet with, on the average, 10 new people each week to reach that goal. Well, some people look at that number and they start throwing in the towel all over again. You know, they don't know how to get to 10 people a week. It's overwhelming to them. They have no idea how to go out and fish. But that's where a plan comes in. So just think, if your average client is client presentation is 1 hour long, and let me stop right there and tell you, it should never exceed an hour. You know, unless it goes into, let's write the paperwork, let's close the deal, it can go over an hour. You might excuse yourself, you know, you're talking nonsense, small talk, or talking too much, frankly. When you go in with a determination to do a professional presentation, you understand to stay on track, you understand what the key points are, you get it done in less than an hour. And then let's say that you add an hour in for travel time. You know, by the time you schlepped your stuff, your whatever you got to take with your laptop and all that, and you drive to your client, assuming it's not an online meeting, you know, you add another hour to that. So based on that assumption, you're working 20 hours a week toward achieving your goal of $100,000. That's what it's taken you to sit down to do 10 presentations so you close 1. So let's keep going. So it's an eye-opener, really. This is the aha moment for most people who are breaking down their goals. They've never done it this way before, right? But let me tell you something. It is absolutely possible for you to earn 6 figures if you know what you need to do to get there. You know, in this example, breaking it down again, it's 10 presentations a week, using your average sales stats, of course, that will equate to $100,000. So that's, you know, really, you can get there if you understand what getting there looks like. And if you plan on how to get there, you can absolutely make $100,000. So, but don't celebrate just yet, because that's 10 presentations a week, not just 10 new contacts. And sometimes I think, you know, people need to have a better clarification of what that is. It's not just getting 10 names. It's not just having a 5-minute conversation. It's 10 presentations, serious business presentations a week. So to get that 10, we still got a lot of work to do. And it's time to evaluate again. How many new contacts do you typically make in order to schedule an appointment for a professional presentation? That's an individual stat. You might say, well, I usually talk to 20 people to make 1, or I talk to 30 people to make 5, or whatever. You got to know, you know, what your hit rate is, if you will. How many contacts you typically make in order to schedule an appointment for a professional presentation. You got to know your stats, guys. Start evaluating your efforts, because that's exactly what your boss would do. If you're your own boss, this is the way you need to think about your business. And now let's put the pedal to the metal. This is where the work really begins. So based upon this example, you need 10 opportunities to show your services or products to potential clients every week to reach that goal. So what task, effort does it take for you to get 10 appointments? You've got to go fishing for your prospective clients. They're not just going to jump in the boat. And you need to know, you know, what you usually, what is typical for you, what do you need to do to get 10 appointments? And let me tell you right now, nobody gets 10 for 10. No matter how good you are, how polished you are, how experienced you are, nobody gets 10 for 10. So you got to figure out How, what does it take for me to get 10 appointments to show my services or business? And we're just getting started, because now that you know that you need a minimum of 10 client presentations per week to achieve that goal, and you got to figure out what does it take to get the 10. Remember, each task has a value. Each step is leading to you toward your financial goal for the year. So start planning. For example, let's say hypothetically that you succeed in getting an appointment 50% of the time you ask for an appointment. Well, that means that you need to ask 20 people per week for an appointment in order to schedule 10 professional presentations a week, doesn't it? 20 people to come up with 10. Before you panic and quit over the idea that you need to reach 20 new people per week to set 10 firm appointments, that breaks down to 4 new people a day. Okay, you're an entrepreneur. You're in business for yourself. You need to understand what it takes. And looking at it this way, say, well, I need 4 people a day, that gives you a goal. But I do want you to stop again. If the idea of you having to find 4 people on the average per day to achieve a 6-figure income, if that overwhelms you, you know what, it might be time to reconsider working for yourself in a sales related business. Wondering where they'll come from, that's one thing, but and we're going to get there, right? But not believing it's possible or not being willing to do what it takes to get there is an entirely different story. It takes 100 new people for you to get 1 meeting online, in person, on the phone, or anything in between. Let me tell you something. You need to work on you, and you need to make changes to how you're approaching them. It should never take somebody 100 new people to get 1 meeting. You've got to close in on your stats and figure out, how can I do what I do better? What could I be saying? What could I not be saying? How could I be better at what I do? So if you want to reach your goal, then you'll do everything it takes to get there, especially be willing to improve you and your skills. Never underestimate the power of stats. If you're going to start doing stats, you start it right now. And if you don't know how you're doing, how will you gauge your success? Right? You got to understand, am I good at this? Am I not good yet? What do I need to do to get better? How will you ever know you need improvement unless you take a realistic look at what effort you're taking right now to be able to be successful? So again, let's recap. Assumptions for presentation purposes is that you close 1 in 10 people you meet with. You're successful in setting up a professional presentation 50% of the time. So based on that, you need to contact 20 people to make 10 appointments to close 1. And so, we're reverse engineering this, guys. We're looking at it from reverse, right? And I think it's pretty exciting when you do that. I would venture to guess most people on this call never have. You need 4 people a day, 20 contacts a week to schedule 10 appointments, each week, and that will result in 1 sale, and that will lead, based on this hypothetical, to $100,000. So you see how this is working? We're planning in reverse to get to your ultimate goal. Then you got to find a 4, don't you? I mean, that's the overwhelming part for so many people. If you're going to find 4, let me tell you, it absolutely, positively takes a plan of action. You won't find them wandering around in the desert. You're going fishing. They're not going to hop in a boat. They're not just going to miraculously show up, although once in a while we're out there and, we do happen to meet somebody. Business doesn't usually work that way. You've got to plan on, I need to go fishing. Where am I going? There's no magical formula for finding those 4. The key ingredients, though, to finding 4, it comes down to your effort, your determination, and a constant reminder of that plan. I need to get 20 to talk to 10 to close 1 to make 100,000. Don't ever let that leave your mind. You make it a goal and you don't quit until you find them. So if it comes down for your business, based on your numbers that you need 4 a week, don't quit until you find them. Find a way to find them, right? Figure out where you're going to go fishing. It comes down, though, to really what works for you. And again, that's an individual thing. But here's some ideas, just a starting point for you, so that you can look at how you might turn up the heat and find a 4. Call everybody everybody you've ever done business with. You just call them, dial for dollars, I call it, right? Call them and ask for an appointment. You don't necessarily have to call your third cousin, your mom, and all these people and drive them crazy in your personal world. Call everybody call everybody you've done business with and ask for that appointment. Spend a few hours in a coffee shop making a few friends. Now, some of you just all got all excited. You Starbucks hounds think, wow, what a great way, But let me tell you, if you go go fishing for 4 people in a coffee shop, you better be doing it with purpose. You don't sit there and hang out and not pay attention to looking for a fish, right? You reach out to past clients and ask them, who do you know? Boy, I tell you what, we learned this from real estate, that what you nurture the most are your past clients, because your past clients are your future business. And so you need to learn to start asking that question of everybody. Who do you know? Every phone call, every contact, every Facebook, conversation, every client. Who do you know? Attend a BNI meeting. You know what? If you play your cards right, you could get 20 new people just from attending one BNI group. Volunteer to do a presentation at a Chamber of Commerce meeting or a Rotary Club. You could start a conversation on Facebook that leads to a live conversation. You could join other networking groups, more casual ones on Meetup, not just for business, maybe they're hiking clubs or book clubs or whatever, to meet your average everyday people. You could run an ad on Facebook, put out flyers, hang door hangers, whatever, right? You do that's straight out marketing. The bottom line is, you don't rest until you found the 20 to schedule the 10 to close the 1. That's what it's all about. Find the 20 to schedule the 10 to close the 1. And when you keep that again in the forefront of your mind, you keep with your plan and you keep moving. And then what comes next? You fill your calendar. Whatever those things are, those efforts, tasks, projects that you're going to use to find your fish, you fill up the calendar. And remember, you're not making a wish list, okay? A whole lot of that's been going on, since the beginning of time. It goes on in every industry. You're not making a wish list. You're planning for success. There's a big difference. The wish list, I'm going to make lots of money next year, right? The planning for success is, my target is 100,000. How am I going to get there? It's time to fill up your calendar with things that you need to do to find those fish. So just filling in your calendar alone, guys, is motivating. When you come out from the clouds after Christmas and New Year's and you hit January, you won't be wandering around the desert, yawning and scratching in January and waiting till February to wake up and March to get busy. You're already going to have a full calendar. And it's very, very motivating, right? You will begin to look at each week as being a production week. What kind of production, and how do I need to take? What kind of action do I need to take to be able to find the 20 to do a presentation with 10 to close 1? And so naturally, you'll use a digital calendar. We all do, right? I don't know where I'd be without mine, for now, but you also need to use a hard copy calendar for now. I do that still to this day, right? Why? Because when you print out, I use Outlook, by the way. When I print out the calendar for the month in Outlook and I see all these blank spots and my calendar's not full, I'm not working my business. And so it's very convicting for you to have to look at your calendar to see how full it is, see how you're doing, right? A blank calendar won't lead to anything but poverty. I guarantee you've got your personal calendar filled. You've got out there your vacations already on the calendar, and birthdays and anniversaries and all kinds of stuff's already on that calendar. But what does it look like when it comes to your business? A blank calendar will lead to nothing but poverty. And then you decide where you're going to go to fish. Well, you have to have a plan, for this, to find this for potential clients, because the bottom line is, if you don't, you won't. You just can't knock around through life hoping that you're just accidentally going to run into people. You go fishing with purpose. You make a commitment for the year to take the steps to find those fish. And if it's by attending BNI groups, for instance, as a guest, by the way, you don't need to join them. You search for a list of local groups right now. Google BNI or Business Network International. You'll put your zip code in and find meetings close to you, and pick those meetings that you're going to go to right now. And you mark your calendar, and you know what? You keep your commitment. And then I want you to understand, though, as a warning, how you introduce yourself at like a BNI group will determine how successful you'll be within that group. So if you don't have an influential intro, you need one. Listen, the elevator speech thing, that whole 30 seconds to tell your whole life story, it's a killer. It's long enough for you to bore them. It's long enough for you to blow them off. It's long enough for you to put your foot in your mouth. You don't need 30 seconds. You need maybe a 10-second influential intro that will make people say to you after the meeting, wow, that's interesting. What do you really do? That's what you need. If you don't know how to get one done, get busy getting one done, and ask me how if you need some help. What about the coffee shop idea? Again, some of you are salivating over that. It was just down your alley, right? If you like the idea of hanging out in a coffee shop to find your fish, you need to understand a couple of things. Number one, you need to plan that time. It needs to be on your calendar. So you pick a day, a time, a duration, and you stick it on your calendar. Because see, you're not going to hang out at Starbucks. You're not going just when it's convenient. You're going because you're going fishing for your business. So you keep your commitment to that appointment, and you need to be prepared. What are you going to say? Here's a hint, guys. You don't want to go straight into talking about your business or your products. Nobody wants to do that in Starbucks the first meeting. You need to learn to ask questions that will tell you, what kind of fish do I have right in front of me? And you got to find the need before you can fill it, right? So you determine to look for that by asking questions and building that relationship. You don't go to the same coffee shop every time. You move around a little bit. Maybe you want to go to a particular coffee shop once a week for a month, and then you shuffle around and find a new one. Now, why do I say that? Well, because, if you go the same day, same time, you've got it on your calendar kind of thing, the same day each week, you're going to find some familiar faces, right? You're there at the same time that a lot of these people make their daily coffee run. They usually go the same time of day. And just that familiarity will give you an opportunity to maybe start building relationships. So you want to shift it up. If you don't have an option for another coffee shop, then stay with the same schedule maybe for a month and then shift it up and put it at a different time, a different day or whatever for the next month. So you don't want to go into the same one each time, same day, and never move it around. And remember, you're there to fish, so stay focused. It's not time for you to sit back, put your feet up, drink your latte, and play on your cell phone. That's not why you're there. You're there for a purpose. You're there to catch fish. So don't get caught up having, meaningless, really, personal conversations, with no goal. You are there to fish, and you don't quit till you find four. So you better stay focused, right? And remember, that if you come home empty-handed with no potentials for a future meeting, after you've done it over and over, you're doing it wrong. And you need to understand what you need to say, not say, the words influence or words compel, words repel. Go back to square one and learn how to fish, right? If you want to do the coffee shop networking kind of thing, you can do it successfully if you stay on target, if you're there, with purpose in mind, if you mark your calendar and keep your commitment. And then digital world, right? Boy, I tell you what, it's wide open, right? And people, it boggles your mind. You hear about all kinds of options out there. But you know what? Saying you don't want to use social media or things like Facebook ads at our day and time, it's like saying, no, I'd prefer the Pony Express over Federal Express. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. We are in the new millennium, like it or not. There's a world of opportunity out there. Whether or not you tap into it is your personal business. But, it does take discipline and it takes purpose. You don't think it's personal enough. Some people say, well, I like the one-on-one. It's just like so cold. Well, you need to think again, because you know what? Back in the day, all we had was the Pony Express to communicate, and people bought and sold real estate, conducted business. They even made marriage proposals all through written correspondence. So it's absolutely possible to build relationships that way. It always comes down to your communication skills and the words you use. And so you need to be sharpened in on that to be sure that you're a good communicator and you speak with purpose. You're in business. It's time to use the tools, for the new millennium. So again, it's a choice that you make if you go digital or not. But remember, you can learn anything you set your mind to. It is not as complicated as it sounds, when you're talking to a techie, for instance. They can make it sound overwhelming with lingo we don't understand. But when you break it down, it's not complicated to work in the digital world. If that's something you want to do, you just got to set your mind to learning it, right? But speaking of digital, if you decide to use social media, then you need to determine the time you're going to spend online fishing and mark your calendar. Everything's an appointment, right? Every task, every project. Serious digital marketers spend about 2 hours a day online, but they are well thought out, a well-planned 2 hours, and not idle conversation or interaction with friends. What did you have for lunch? I just got my nails done. Sorry, you need to plan your social media time after hours. If you want to do the digital thing, it needs to be a predetermined time, and you need to mark your calendar, keep your commitment. And it will work for you if you have that self-discipline. But there's more. If you use Facebook ads, and you really should, by the way, then you need to plan for that too. You plan the ad, you plan the time, you plan the budget. Surely you don't think that you can be successful without ever investing in your business. It drives me crazy. You know, I see, for instance, in the real estate world, we still see brokers put out signs, get your real estate license, classes are $50 or whatever, right? Let me tell you something. I don't know what it is today. I know what it was in the dinosaur days when I was still in the business, right? But it's going to take you $5,000 to get into real estate. You know, first you have to take that class, and you have to pay to take the test. And you have to pay when you get your license, and you have to, you know, pay to have access to the lock boxes. You have to buy the lock boxes. You have to buy your sign. It takes $5,000 to get into real estate. So don't think for 1 second that you can be in business and that you'll find success without ever spending a dime. It's just not realistic, guys. You need to, you know, plan a budget, have a budget for marketing, have a budget for, you know, things that you need to do or tools that you need to buy to be successful. And then again, you mark it on your calendar and keep your commitment. But again, you need to have a digital plan. When you start working the internet, because it's so massive, billions of people are on Facebook every day, right? It's massive. And if you decide to run ads, you got to have a plan to manage those leads. And you will get leads, and I'm not saying they're all good leads, but you need to have some digital plan for follow-up so that you don't get leads and just lose them. I mean, who wants to advertise, spend money, and then fail because you couldn't follow up with all the people? So you'll need a digital system for follow-up as well. But don't dismiss what you don't understand. You don't understand how it all works. Doesn't mean you can't do it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It means you simply don't understand. So you might want to look into that as a means of finding your fish. So let's map it out. Let's assume that you had a dozen different things that you could look at, ways that you could build, places you could go to fish, and that you decided you want to attend a BNI meeting every week as a guest only. Remember, you don't want to join these things. You don't need to join them. Just go as a guest, and that you dedicate purposeful time in a coffee shop. So you're going to do that too. You're going to go there and for the purpose of fishing, and you're also going to develop contacts on social media. So with that in mind, you've just picked three. Hypothetically, we picked 3 ways that we want to, or tasks, I should say, that we're going to use to reach our ultimate financial goal. Because remember, never lose sight that I need to contact 20 to make an appointment with 10 to close 1. That's the name of the game every step of the way. And again, that's going to be altered a little bit based on your real numbers. You know, you might close more often than 1 in 10. I don't know. But whatever that is, whatever your projections are, whatever the real numbers are, always have it in mind, especially when you're mapping it out. And so I took the liberty of taking those 3 things and putting them on the calendar. It looks pretty exciting already, right? You're busy. You started the new year, and you actually have an action plan ready to run with. You can see here that I did pick 4 BNI groups. These will be different BNI groups. You're going as a guest. Now, why do I say that? Well, guys, listen, you don't have to join a BNI group and make a commitment to be there every single week, meeting with the same people. You need to get more contacts than just that. Those groups are fabulous if you're in real estate, insurance, a moving company, plumbers, electricians, you know, storage firms. Those are great for services that, you know, people commonly use. If you're not in one of those, it's not a good idea to commit all that time. You probably aren't going to get referrals, right? And so you go as a guest. Most of them will allow you to go twice, some maybe 3 times, you know, to check them out. Basically, is this going to be a group for me? You're there to check them out. But the beauty is that as a guest, they want you to join, because they want to have one more person in that group. They only have one person from each industry type. So most of you would fit right in, right? But they know that each person represents referrals. So if I joined, even though I'm not in real estate, for instance, I would feel obliged to go to my BNI group for a electrician, go to my BNI group for, you know, real estate and what have you. So that's how that all works. Probably not going to work for you. You don't need to join and make a commitment. But the beauty of it is, because they do want you to join, because they do want to impress you, because they do want you to be part of the group, they'll give you an envelope filled with business cards of every member of that group. So you can walk out of there with 20 leads, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 leads, depending on how big that BNI group is. Those are your fish that you can contact right away. And you know what? Maybe they're already established in their business and they already have the services and the products that you want to talk about. But the bottom line, everybody knows somebody. So if you meet with them and ask them, who do you know? Chances are you're going to do very well. So anyway, we've got 4 different BNI groups here for the month of January. We've scheduled that time in for social media every single day. There's no rhyme or reason, guys. I just put down, certain times a day, like for instance, social media 1 to 3. There are some, interesting facts, and that is for instance, Wednesday at 3:00 p.m. It's the most active time on Facebook, and certain things like that. But in reality, there is nothing set in stone. You just need to be sure. I'm going to work social media though, so by golly, it needs to be on your calendar, and you need to keep the commitment. When you have a calendar like this, for the most part, it's not flexible. So if you have somebody that calls you up and say, hey, let's play a round of golf, just because you work for yourself doesn't mean you should be disloyal to yourself. You can work around this. If people want to schedule things, if you can, if at all possible, make a dental appointment in and around the schedule, you need to consider this a commitment to build your business, to find 20, to talk, to present to 10, to sell 1. So listen, work around this schedule. Now, you also need to know that you need to schedule time, for follow-up. You just don't know when that is yet, right? But you need to know that that's all time you're going to have to allocate. You need to actually have the time for those presentations. You're going to do 10 of them a week. When are they going to be, right? You need to have time set aside for training and classes to improve yourself, personal development, if you will, conferences and team meetings and things like that. You need all these things need to be on your calendar too. So maybe you already know, I meet with my team on Tuesdays at, 8 a.m., whatever. Stick it on your calendar and make the commitment. You might know that I have a workshop coming up. I have a conference coming up. I have a Chamber of Commerce thing coming up. Whatever. You need to put every single thing on your calendar. Now, I will tell you that, again, most of you, what do you have out there? Oh, I got my vacation blocks already on my calendar. I'm not going to be working that week. You've got all kinds of holiday parties and birthday parties and stuff like that. Right? Now's the time to make the commitment to you, your business, to find 20, to talk to 10, to sell 1. And this calendar needs to be full, and it's very convicting. Think about when you get tempted to say, well, I don't really have to do my social media today. I can switch it around and go have coffee with my friend or whatever, right? You need to understand that you're going to pay the price for that gap. So everything needs to be a serious commitment, the same as if you had a boss and he told you your marching orders. These are your marching orders, right? And so mark your calendar. So again, you need to have that free time to meet with your 10 people. You got to figure that out. It's going to be hit and miss there. You never know when you can meet with them, right? Until you have a meeting of the minds. You need to schedule time for that training, self-improvement, to connect with your team. And again, time for calls and conferences, and you mark it all up. But more importantly, you don't just mark it, you keep your commitments. Speaking of conferences, listen, conferences, conventions don't just happen. We make them happen. You put them on your calendar. Once you do, it feels like a commitment, right? You start working toward that goal. Conferences are planned well in advance, at least most of them, or at least, bigger ones, right? In fact, a lot of people on this call already knew about a conference in September of 2020. They knew it since last September. And listen, you want to go to that conference, it needs to be on your calendar. You don't say, well, if I have time, I'm going to go. No. It needs to be on the calendar. You make the commitment. You don't say, well, if I have money, I'm going to go. No. Guarantee you, your vacation is marked off on your calendar. You're going to find the money to go. And so conference is the same kind of thing. You make the commitment, you mark your calendar, and you stick with it. Conferences don't just happen, and they're a very important part of our growth. And then time isn't the only thing we plan. When I sit down that last week of the year, I look at everything. I shop insurance and policies. Can I save money? I look at apps and services that I bought into, and I say, wait a minute, how much did I spend on that last year, and how many times did I actually use it? You'll find a whole bunch of wasted money sitting there usually, and it could probably pay for that conference. But there is a cost of doing business for every business, so we also need to plan in travel. We need to, budget for tools and for training and for marketing. That should be a part of every budget every year. In fact, from real estate, I can tell you that back in the day, we would have a budget, usually 15 to 20% in that range of every commission check. 15 to 20% was set aside, and that was used to market future business. You can't, guys. If you're doing a hobby, you're doing a hobby. But if you're doing a business, you actually need to spend money. Now, a lot of you will say, well, I don't have the money. Well, that's not an excuse. You know why? Because you're 100% in control of that part. So once you've scheduled an event, you calculate the cost to attend that event, you set the goal, and you put it in motion. Maybe you need to, figure out adding a sales transaction to the equation that would cover the cost, right? Maybe you need to set aside a percentage of each sale to make it happen. Just do it. But unless it's on your calendar, unless it's a commitment, unless you know the goal you're working toward, it's never going to happen. So get it on your calendar. Everybody needs continuing ed, classes, and we certainly know that in the licensing or certification fields. If you're in real estate, you have to go to continuing ed, almost everything. And nurses need to be recertified, right? There's all kinds of continuing ed and training that other industries or most industries participating in. And you know what? It isn't free. Maybe you need a coach, and maybe you need to cough up the money for a coach. I still have a coach. I've had a coach for years. I coach other people, but I have a coach. And if you want to be successful, you know what? All these things, all these action items that you're taking, including training and coaching, you know what it means? It equates to more money. And so you can never sit back and just say, well, I don't have the money. You'll never have the money if you don't dedicate the money and the time it takes to earn more money. That's the way it works, right? You're in business, and it isn't free to succeed. It takes time, it takes talent, and it takes treasure. So budget how much you'll spend next year on you. How much time, how much will I spend on training and coaching? How much will I spend on the things that I know I need to build my business? And you know what? It comes back tenfold when you actually invest in your business instead of just playing around with it, trying not to spend money. So education should be in your budget, as well as the conferences and the tools and everything else. So let's recap. Again, you need to determine how much you want to make. What is your financial goal? What is that income next year goal? What is that paycheck goal going to look like? Come up with a number. Your number isn't my number is not yours, but come up with a number that makes you stretch, it makes you uncomfortable, but it's not so big that it'll cause you to quit. And then you break it down. Remember, you got to break that down. More importantly, of course, you break it down into the months, but the most important breakdown there is to the week, because you're going to be living your life with your calendar, week to week. So you got to break it down to look at, well, how much money does that look like in a week? And then, of course, you average come up with your average commission, your average earnings per transaction. So you know how many transactions you have to do to equate to how much you need per week, right? You're backing into reverse engineer. And then you divide your weekly projected earnings by the average commission payout. So again, how many sales per week do you need to do? In the case that I gave you tonight, it was 1, because the average commission on a sale was $2,000. It might be completely different for you. If you're in real estate, boy, that's really off. In our area, the average commission would be at least 5 times that. So, you've got to work it based on what the world you're in and what your earnings look like. And then you determine the task. What action items, what am I going to do based on my stats? We've got to look at, what does it take and how many people do I have to talk to? Because until you know your stats, you don't know how many people you need to talk. You're just shooting in the wind. You have no idea. So you deal with all that, and then after you come up with a task, you fill up your calendar and you keep your commitments. So consider yourself, you're your own boss, and do what a boss would do. These are the things expected of you if you want to get paid. And so you look at those tasks as things, your stepping stone, your job description, if you will, what you need to do to be able to be successful, to get that paycheck that you projected in the very beginning. Then you track it, you evaluate it, you change when you need to change, and you grow. It all works together for good. Right now you have no idea who will buy whatever product or service you're selling. You have no idea. So stop second guessing. Just keep moving. Keep taking the action, right? And remember that no meeting is without purpose. Never, ever, ever leave a meeting, end a phone call without asking, who do you know? Because you know what? You'll just keep leveraging and leveraging and leveraging, and you'll meet more people and have more of those 20 people that you need in the pipeline, as long as you remember to ask that question. Listen, I could go on and on. I hope that conceptually I've helped break it down so you understand how this whole thing works. And I really hope that you'll take what you learned, listen to the recording again, map it out, sit down with somebody else if you need to. But I really, really hope that you'll come up with a plan for next year by the end of this year. If you don't know how to fish to find a 4, you reach out to me. I've got more ideas for you. Maybe I can help you get there. If you feel as if you're stuck on a perpetual hamster wheel, just chasing and chasing people, rest assured, it doesn't have to be that way. And if you have questions after you've attempted to build your plan, don't reach out to me until you've actually taken some steps there. If you have questions after that, reach out to me. You see my email address, lynn@livinglarger.life. So you can reach out to me at that point, and I'll do whatever I can to help leverage you, to help motivate you to do that plan and to stay on track in 2020, because it's going to be an amazing year. I believe in you, and I hope I've helped you in the process of reaching your goals. Take care. Thanks for being on.